Hey everybody, welcome to the Arcade Lounge podcast. This is voted #1 podcast in the tri-state area. Which tri-state area? That's for you to decide. I'm joined by my buddy Aus10Aurelius today. Do you want to tell the people about yourself a little bit, man?
Well, hello. I go by Austin in real life, and then on the internet, I'm known as Aus10Aurelius or OG Gothi on Twitter. And I'm a writer. I hype up my boys' posts on Instagram and Twitter, which is pretty much my primary skill, I would say.
Who would your boy be? Who is that?
That would be you, actually.
Oh, I'm the boy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, shit. Thanks. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure. I wanted context, so I appreciate that. Anyways, I brought you on here today not to talk about how much you hype my content up, but I wanted to talk with you about a topic I feel like you and I can kind of relate on. And by extension, I think many gamers and people can relate on, and that is the concept of escapism.
Ooh.
If I had a higher budget, I would put like a sound effect or like a little do-do-do-do right there,
course.
but I don't, so. So escapism, really quick, just for the people who don't really know what that means, I'm going to give the Oxford Language Dictionary. Oxford is not a language, but it's a series. Anyways, I'm going to give you the dictionary definition of escapism, right? So escapism is the tendency to seek distraction and relief from unpleasant realities, especially by seeking entertainment or engaging in fantasy. And in case you didn't know, video games are a form of entertainment, and that might be kind of like...
No way.
Mind-blowing. Yeah, that might be mind-blowing for a couple of people to know, but, we here on the Arcade Lounge podcast pride ourselves in educating the public, So yeah, escapism and gaming, I feel like those two kind of go hand in hand. A lot of times, I personally happen to use gaming as a form of escapism, not so much now as I did, I think, in the Dark Ages, but...
Oh, the Dark Ages.
What would you say escapism and gaming kind of means to you?
Well, what struck me about the dictionary definition, right, was the unpleasant realities part, and I immediately, the phrase that occurred to me in my head was, oh, all of them, right? Because I found, like you mentioned the Dark Ages, right? There were points in my life where I just didn't want to be in the real moment, and like you say, a lot of gamers can probably resonate with that, and games provide such a unique form of escapism as opposed to media, or other media, like TV, cartoons, whatever movies, and because you're doing it, right? So it's not simply escaping into the world, but being a part of it as well.
Yeah, that's one thing, at least for me, that's always been appealing about gaming is when a hero does something in gaming, it's usually because you are the hero doing the thing.
Right.
And it definitely doesn't portray reality in the most realistic light, but I think that's the point, right? Is escapism from reality.
Yeah.
So gaming really lets you have much more of an influence over a wide manner of things, and that can be really appealing, especially when life seems to be kind of like spiraling out of control, or maybe it's just moving a bit faster and you can never seem to like get a step ahead.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of discussions, be it about movies, TV, or games, or any form of escapism, entertainment, whatever, about realism and about, do you want it to be this perfect sugarcoat candy world because you're trying to escape into it, or do you want it to be gritty and believable so that you can be more fully immersed? And of course, it's subjective and can't be nailed down in any one context, but it's certainly worthy of discussing.
Absolutely. Which brings us kind of into one thing I wanted to talk about with you, which is people's fascination with simulator, survival, and crafting games.
Oh, yes.
And I thought that would be like a really interesting way to kind of talk about this subject. Like, you remember when Minecraft first came out and that like blew the fuck up?
Yeah, there had never been anything like it seemed like, because like you say, the survival mechanics, which now we're, on the other end of it, where people are like, oh, survival mechanics in every game, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, at the time, it was just a mind-blowing concept. Like, wait, you have to eat food? You have to fucking, keep yourself safe from enemies in the night? Like, it was such a novel thing at the time.
Absolutely. And I think it came at a really interesting time where, like, open world was starting to get more pigeonholed into checklists, which I want to bring that whole sort of thing up in a little bit, because I find a lot of fascination with people playing simulator games and filling out checklists. But on the subject of Minecraft, you can be anything you want to be in Minecraft. You can go and create all sorts of crazy stories. It's 3D Lego. 3D Lego, I mean, that already exists, but it's virtual Lego. You can build things without having to pay $1 per Lego piece, and you can fucking save multiple things without having to figure out space for all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about the survival genre is emergent narrative. That idea that the story of what happens is between what you and your buddies do and the people you meet on the server, you know?
Oh, yeah. Do you remember, I don't know if you were into Minecraft when it kind of like first came around, when like alpha was being built up.
Yeah,
Were you around that era? Okay. Do you remember Yogscast?
Oh, yes. OG.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that really did something for a lot of people. It really awoke this idea that you could build some really crazy narrative, and even if actively playing it, you're not role playing. I mean, I guess you are, but now at this point you're like acting, you're setting up an entire scene to play out and everything. But it's weird how people use gaming as a form to make film, but that can also be a form of escapism. I don't know, Minecraft just really blew the gates open on what we could do with using games to make stuff. They're not the first. I would say one of the first would be like Machinima and Red vs. Blue.
Yeah.
Minecraft really did it.
Now there's a whole, GTA has in-game...
That's true, yeah.
Tools to make machinima with, and a lot of people are doing some really cool stuff. I went down a rabbit hole not too long ago. I wish I could remember the channel name. I would have to go through my YouTube history to find it now, but yeah, they were making like a crime drama in GTA, that was episodic and had all these characters, and
oh wow.
Yeah, and all these crazy, action shot camera angles. It was mind-blowing to me, and all the tools are right there in GTA for them, set up by Rockstar for people to use.
I mean, speaking on GTA, that game has been released and re-released so many times that we're well in past, ever wanting GTA 6. That's not true. I kind of want GTA 6.
I think everyone does to some extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
But seeing it released so many times, people don't buy it again and again and continue to play it because of the story. People aren't like, oh, the gripping story of GTA 5. No, people want to go role play.
Yeah, it's the sandbox.
Yeah. Why do you think people are attracted to simulating real life but don't want to do real life?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. And I didn't mean to bring it to GTA, but it's fortuitous because when I came down with COVID, I simply lived my life through GTA. I, got some cars, did some missions with a couple friends, but mostly just playing solo, chatting with people in the lobby. And when I came out of it, I didn't have COVID anymore. There was still a solid 2-3 weeks where I was just playing GTA because that was my life now. So I can relate to that in the sense that, yeah, you'll spend all this time on something that isn't real, but it doesn't even really feel real, but it does feel important, right? Like you did put in all this time and you did, you have a presence here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at not just GTA, I think GTA Online specifically kind of normalized that role-playing thing across the board. I don't think I saw as many Twitch streamers, for example, role-playing any one collective thing prior to GTA. Maybe like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. But
yeah, something where it's built in, but a lot of games now, like you said, with Minecraft, it actually kind of happens, naturally, where you have this world that you're in that is separate from your real persona and your real experience. And
yeah, and it's so strange that it's so popular, because I look at, okay, here's a confession. This might be a hot take. I don't know if it is, maybe for like a Westerner gamer, but I love simulator games. I love the fuck out of simulator games. I'll paint a house all day long in a simulator. I'll drive truck. I love truck simulator. I can't fly planes though. I'm pretty bad at that. But working a 9-to-5 is like the most monotonous shit someone could do ever. Mm-hmm. So that's not true. Watching paint dry or maybe like grass grow is pretty monotonous. But I've always struggled to find fulfillment in a regular 9-to-5. But in a game, I can do it for 5-10 hours, not bat an eye. It doesn't matter that I'm like throwing life away just like with nothing to even show for it.
Oh, no.
Here's Truck Simulator. You love trucks. Yeah, I fucking love trucks.
Yeah, and that's, there is one thing to be said about the fantastical experience that you could never experience in real life. But then, like you're trying to get to, the simulation of real life experiences. And I think the answer to me, right, is that of course it's easier to pick up a game instead of actually go drive a fucking 18-wheeler truck and, get licensed to do it and whatever.
Not with that attitude. You got to try harder than that.
You're right. I should be thinking higher for myself. But even if you do it in real life, you have that one truck, you have that one license, you can go be a long-haul truck driver. But in the game, you got, 20 trucks. You can drive any truck you want. And it's that broadening of the scope of what you can do and how well you can do it, too, with the input of, into a virtual world. So you do feel like a truck driver, even though you're not.
That's very true. I would like to feel like a multi-truck driver, kind of Voltron all the trucks together.
Oh, dude. That's the only way I actually become a truck driver.
Exactly. I think so many more people would become a truck driver if that was the case. Yeah. We'd all be signing up for our own Transformer bots. But
yeah, there's a certain amount of satisfaction being like, well, I sure don't know how to drive an 18-wheeler truck, but I'm god tier at Truck Simulator. I sure can simulate that truck driving.
I actually put it on my resume, truck driver, Truck Simulator. So circling back just a little bit to mindless, tedious stuff while we're on the topic of simulators, it's definitely a dying breed now, as indicated by Ubisoft kind of playing damage control with a lot of things they're putting out, but it's a whole different topic. I wanted to bring them up for a second because they kind of, in my opinion, normalized the gameplay loop of just checking off a bunch of objectives from a list, right? Like Ubisoft normalized, in my opinion, the giant maps with the map markers that are almost overwhelming on the eyes. And your eyes are just going two different directions. Like that SpongeBob meme when he's reading the fucking book and his eyes are going two different ways. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any speculation at all as to why maybe people kind of found so much appeal in that? Like I get, we were talking about Euro Truck Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
It gamifies a real life job.
Yeah.
But I can't for the life of me understand why people are appealed to Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, any of those type of games where you're just checking things off of a list.
I certainly understand it, especially in the subsequent iterations of Assassin's Creed, like as a, huge, we've talked about it before. I really appreciate what Assassin's Creed is, or at least was.
Sure, yeah.
But that has less to, like you say, with the gameplay loop, right? And I think it's that sense of completion, right? Where, sure, there's the story. I mean, for one, it does provide more options for different gamers, right? So there's different, besides the main storyline, there's all these different side things you can do. And I think there was, like you say, they kind of popularized this design theory that the more there is to do in the game, the more content there is, the better / more worthy of AAA it is. And really ran with that, right? Like you say, with the subsequent Far Cry and, which I played a bit of, but not nearly as much of it as Assassin's Creed. I would relate it even to like all the way back to like Super Mario Sunshine and the 3D platforming collecting type things. Each level you clear, you're getting that 1 star, and then there's multiple ones throughout the level that changes, whatever. But the goal of the game is to collect it all, the collectathon. So it's like a modern metamorphosis of that idea, where instead of collecting stars or coins or points or whatever, some arbitrary gamey thing, it's kind of contextualizing it all into a real life context, real life setting, where it's like complete all the missions to get 100% completion. That's the arbitrary goal. But each time you're, like in Assassin's Creed, I suppose you're adding assassins to the Brotherhood or completing random contracts and getting money.
Collecting coins for free pizza at Pizza Hut.
Exactly, yeah. Whatever Ezio invented Pizza Hut, if you didn't know, actually. That's his...
Actually, yeah. You know that famous line that people use? Pizza, pizza. That's Ezio.
Yeah, that quoted. That's the part people leave out.
I'm Ezio, pizza, pizza. what he says. That's the whole quote, actually. No, you do bring up a good point, though, that I think we have always favored collectathon type stuff because I don't know if everyone's a perfectionist or if we're all like OCD kind of people. I know I am. So for me, those types of things have always appealed to me. Collecting all the Pokemon, clearing off the list, getting everything in Banjo-Kazooie, one of my favorite games of all time. You know, whatever it may be. But those things are done on a different scale than something like a Ubisoft game where it's like, here's 400 hours of the same fucking thing. Let it rip. Go ahead. Drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for 20 hours, maybe it's okay. Especially if the characters are it all depends on the context, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Right. And they're used, gameplay hours. I don't know if you recall this era, but it was kind of in the middle of that when, Assassin's Creed was one of the best selling yearly franchises. And, there was all this talk about gameplay hours. And if it was leaked beforehand that there was less than, I don't know, like 40, people were like, well, I'm not paying $60 for that. And I don't know how much of that has to do with, like you say, the what was being released and the gaming fan base being conditioned to want that, or if they, a chicken or egg situation, if they were caving to that pressure.
I think on that specifically, that just comes down to a specific sect of gamers who kind of want to get their money's worth from everything. Like, I can tell you right now, I've played some $15 games that have given me more fulfillment than $60 games. Easily. Plenty of indie games out there will do more for you than a $60 AAA title will, and they also won't sell you a season pass or other DLC.
Yeah. A good example of that for me is Slay the Spire. Like, I have never even, I suppose I pay for Game Pass, which is what I've been playing it on, but I picked that game up maybe half a year ago, and I still play it very consistently.
Oh yeah, that's a fantastic game. And that's one of those games too where you can play it for dozens of hours and still have different things happen.
Yeah.
It's just a really well designed game.
Mm-hmm.
If you are looking for a way to figure out if a game is worth your time, this may help you. This is at least the way that I do it. I look at a game as though I'm paying for a movie ticket. So if I'm getting an hour and a half of good entertainment for about $15, then I'm going to be satisfied. So if I buy a $60 game and I can get like a 6-8 hour solid adventure out of it, feeling good all the way through, like Kirby, for example. Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out this year. That's about the 8 to 10 hour adventure, $60 game. But it's full of so much charm, so much variety. The whole way through, you're kind of smiling, having a good time. So it doesn't feel like you are burnt financially.
I think that's, like you say, there's a certain subsect of gamer that definitely analyzes how much gameplay am I getting out of this per dollar, where I've always cared more about moment to moment, am I enjoying playing this game?
Right.
And that's where I fall off with a lot of shooters, is like on the skill curve of getting better, I'm no longer having a good time, and then I stop.
Right, because again, you're playing a game for escapism. You're not playing a game to get more frustrated than you were all day long.
Exactly, yeah. And, there's something to be said about the satisfaction of a skill-based game, and I've been playing Splitgate recently, and that's a very well-crafted shooter. It's very fun to play.
That's a good one.
But it's very arcadey. It's not, nobody's yelling at you over comms about your performance.
I agree. Splitgate feels like what I wanted Halo Infinite to be, but that again is a whole different conversation. I wanted to bring it back for the last few minutes of the podcast here. I kind of wanted to dive into things pertaining to, like, you specifically. As a gamer, not as generalized, what are a few games you like to go to when you're kind of maybe feeling down in the dumps or need something to kind of make you feel empowered again?
I think Assassin's Creed does a good job. I go back to that classic Ezio trilogy simply because of that. I have a gamer power fantasy about being a master assassin, so I suppose that's pretty specific. But
who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't really? But now that I think about it, that might be more of a nostalgia type, comfort. As far as just a game that is crafted in a way that makes me feel satisfied, it's Mountain Blade, either the original or Bannerlord.
Okay.
And the strategy aspect is something I didn't really mention, but that's one of my favorite genres to return to. And I think it's that sense of being impactful and like a large presence in the world. You're a lord, you have a warband, you have eventually lands and things. So that feeling of being, that significance is what the word I'm looking for. And that's what I look to games to make me feel, being involved in whatever process it may be, whatever context. I always want to feel like an important part, not just a part.
That totally makes sense. I feel that way a lot too. Though I do feel like there's a good and a bad way to do it. For example, I am personally not a fan of I'm the only one who can do anything and people are incapable of solving their own personal problems without my intervention. I hate that. I love to feel like I'm in a world where it's moving regardless of my influence, and only the things in my immediate vicinity are things that like I can see myself influencing.
Yeah, and I think that calls back to kind of what I brought up earlier, where do you want it to be this sugar-coated power fantasy where you're the hero and everyone looks to you for everything, or do you want it to be a believable thing where people maybe see what you've already done and be like, hey, you're a guy who does things, maybe you could help me out with this.
Right, because it's much more relatable. We want to relate to someone who's going through not being the all-powerful person. Like, we want to see people go through ups and downs in character growth. Personal growth isn't a continuous upward trajectory. We have our ups and downs. Maybe if you peel all the way back to look at the grand line, you're like, oh, grand line, One Piece shout out. You can see that, there's just a straight up shot, but if you zoom in, you'll see those ups and downs. That's something anyone will know from trying to do anything. You take a step forward, maybe 2 steps back, but then you're going to get 3 steps forward the next time, and so on. So,
yeah, certainly. And I think with RPGs specifically, right, a lot of that is sort of simulated with, stats, skills, your actual progression as a character. And then there's depending on how freeform the story is, sometimes there's that growth of like, you're increasingly important and you're increasingly well known, and then in the more freeform stuff, it is kind of just I have accomplished all these things. You remember what you did. In Skyrim, I barely ever finished the main plot. I was just like sitting on my accomplishments as an adventurer.
Felt like so many people slept on the plot. I'm not saying it's like award-winning, get this guy an award or two for writing it, but yeah, that's kind of fucked up. I shouldn't say that. It's not bad. It's just like not the reason you play Skyrim.
Yeah.
But you do get cool dragon powers, so I'm surprised so many people don't play it.
I never even realized that you don't have to take a side in the Imperial War.
No. But yeah, I like that comparison you're using. You're basically bringing up Skyrim versus Witcher 3, right? It's like, do I want to play my own defined role, or do I want a preset set of shoes to fill?
And I think that's why I put way more hours into Skyrim versus Witcher 3.
That's totally understandable. I'm in the same group. I've maybe played 100, 200 hours of Witcher, but Skyrim, I've played that shit on my Xbox 2, my Xbox the third. I played it on Nintendo Wii. I played it on the Virtua Boy. I played it on my Brita water filter. I played it on my fucking front door. I played Skyrim on everything.
Funny story, actually. My first Skyrim experience was on the PS3, and I really don't know if this was a widespread thing or whatever. It was so long ago that I don't even think I bothered to... I mean, obviously, it wasn't the fucking 90s. I could have looked it up, but...
It was 2013 before the internet existed.
Yeah, exactly. But...
It was 2011.
All of my controls were, like, reversed. Left trigger was right trigger. Direction was, and... I
How the hell?
I bought a whole ass new controller. Exactly. I bought a new controller. I did all these different, troubleshoot things. I remember, actually, yes, I do remember looking at a forum post that someone said something similar had happened, but there was people in the forum didn't believe them. And I was
Did you take out the cartridge and blow into it? Because that usually works.
That usually works, but no, nothing worked. So I think I eventually traded my PlayStation for an Xbox and ended up with it in the bundle, and then I was like, okay, it works this time. I can finally experience this. But it was quite a weird shock.
That's a bit bizarre. Yeah, definitely one of the weirder things I've heard about a game fucking something up console-wise. But to be fair, I know a lot of people had issues with the PS3 version of Skyrim, and for a long time, Bethesda games were notoriously buggy, even more so than, just how they already were. But PS4, or PS3 got like the worst end of that stuff. I definitely am drawn to a lot of RPG type games as a form of escapism as well, because there's so much more, I don't know if nuanced is the best term, but I feel like I have much more influence over who I actually become. I don't really care too much to play a preset role with lines that are already decided for me, unless it's Master Shepard. Master Shepard, that's not a person. Commander Shepard from Halo Effect.
Yeah.
And yeah, even upon reflection of that character, that's one of my favorite series, and I played it growing up when I was going through high school, but going through the remastered trilogy last year, I was like, damn, this guy's written kind of like shit. He's just, I can't relate to this guy. And then I realized that just like most other games that I used as a form of escapism is I didn't really care about Shepard. I cared about the world that I was in. I cared about the political turmoil. I cared about the wars going on. I cared about the relationship between other characters and how I could potentially influence that. I never really cared about Shepard as a person.
Right. And I think that's, that's something I talked to with my cousin not too long ago, because she's a huge fan of all the BioWare stuff. And I think I got the most into Dragon Age 2. And it, like you say, the character is that idea. I can't remember. Tabula rasa is the writing terminology around it. But it's that empty husk for the character to be within. And, I don't know about I can't speak on Mass Effect, but in Dragon Age, it certainly felt like this is just me. Even though there is some dialogue in, happenstance, like, I never really paid much attention to it. But, she had that same realization of, oh, it's not about that character. It's about, even like you said, the things happening around them, the characters around them that I care about so much. And
what is going on back there?
Oh, yeah. One of my intersections near, like just down the street from my house, is a very popular spot for donuts.
I couldn't tell if you had like a fucking bird in the background or if it was a cat just screaming. All I hear on my end is you talking, and in the background there's just this really high-pitched screeching.
Yeah.
It's throwing me off, dude.
I will simply wait for them to... Oh, it looks like they've moved on. It's funny. It happens so often I didn't even notice it, actually. But it is.
I'm going to leave that in there.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Leave that in there. Where were we?
I think I was spouting some nonsense about Dragon Age, but...
Yeah, we were talking about the writing and your cousin's realization with BioWare stuff.
Oh, yeah, well, with Mass Effect specifically, about how what really drew her to it and, got her invested was what is happening around that character. And that empty husk idea, like I said, I can't speak on Mass Effect, but it certainly feels like there is that distinct choice made in every RPG. Is it like, does this character have a character, or is it supposed to be a self-insert for the player?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I think a lot of it too comes down to it being a product of its time. The first Mass Effect came out in, I think, 2007, somewhere around there, right? That's before we had cell phones. So, I mean, we were still living in the dark times. But around there, the idea of just putting binary choices in a game or having branching dialogue trees was kind of revolutionary. It was like very...
That morality meter.
Yeah, that stuff wasn't really new. I mean, they had done it with, what was that, Knights of the Old Republic and stuff like that before. You even look at, like, Deus Ex was doing shit prior to that. But I feel like this was on an epic scale that we really hadn't seen before. It was like the Star Wars of gaming. It was like, holy shit, this is a space epic. This is no small feat. You can spend hours in that game just reading, just because of how much was, put into just building that world. So a lot of times I think Shepard is... intentionally more written as kind of a lens for the character or the player to see the world. But I do also think they tried to make him a character and just that binary writing of is he good or is he bad did not age well.
Right, because most of the choices are presented as dialogue choices, correct?
Correct. And most of the time, too, these dialogue choices tend to have some form of bias, right? Like, you never feel good about being an asshole to your shipmates, so why would you ever do that? There's, like, that option is there, but why are you going to do that? I mean, sure, if you're trying to, like, goof around, shits and giggles, but I've tried to play an asshole. You can't actually play like a hairy butthole, but I've tried to play a mean Master Shepherd in Mass Effect. I hate it. I can't do it.
Yeah. Sorry, you said Master Shepherd again.
Oh, I said Oh, fuck me. God, this interview's over. I'm done.
I think that, that idea of escapism can certainly run away from people. They can start ignoring their entire lives to just be in the world that they want to be in, and that I've been there. It certainly gets a little crazy, a little dangerous at some times, but at the end of the day, you can make you have to try to have that awareness of, like, yes, I do have to live real life, but I think too many people use that slippery slope argument of, well, what if you just decide to stop living real life? And that should never be a deterrent to video games, I don't think, because you just have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah, everything in life is good in moderation, and I definitely think something like that is important to keep in mind as we move forward into VR becoming more common.
Oh yeah,
and I mean like actual cool VR, not this Mark Zuckerberg 3 billion lost in 1 quarter thing, but yeah, VR is pretty crazy. I've seen some people spend 24 hours in VR, spend a few days in VR. Probably don't do that. We have people. Where was this news article from? It was like Russia or some shit, and they were talking about how they're putting VR. Yeah, they were putting VR on robot. That's not right. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I remember.
They were putting VR headsets on cows to simulate meadows to kind of like have them be happier and produce milk.
Yes, which, like, oh man, like applying it to animals was the craziest thing to me. It was like, wow, I never even considered like that angle, and with good reason. Like, nobody should be doing that.
Yo, what kind of dystopian shit is that? What if they accidentally uploaded the wrong program and they just had it open up to the cow standing on a plank, and you just do one of those things, the plank over the side of the building?
Oh yeah. I know. I'll tell you what happened is they watched The Matrix and they were like, oh, that's how the cows are not producing milk, because they're not fooled.
What? How does who watches The Matrix and thinks we got to do this to cows? This is a slap on market right here. Oh my God. Well, with that, I think I'm going to close out this episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, Austin, and speaking
Thank you for having me.
Escapism in a very loose format. This podcast is slowly turning into more conversations about like people and their interests with gaming and how gaming's influenced their lives. So you're part of the process of getting there, and I appreciate you being part of that process. Is there anywhere that people can find you on the internet if they want to keep up with you?
Oh yes, I am known as OG. Oh, sorry. The burnt rubber smell is really starting to get to me here. I am known as @OGGothi. That is OGGOTHI on Twitter, and everywhere else I'm mostly Aus10Aurelius, AUS10 Aurelius. That is AURELIUS. I actually had to buy myself time to spell that.
Yeah, I was looking over to see if you were going to nail the spelling. That was great. You did wonderful. You did it just fine.
Thank you.
And to all of you for, I almost skipped a whole sentence there. And thank you to all of you for tuning into this episode and listening to our rambling. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe, keep gaming, and we'll see you in the future. Peace.
Later.